The Infographic Show is proud to be working with Dollar Shave Club, and they helped make this video possible. Albert Einstein once said, if you put your hand on a hot stove for a minute, it seems like an hour. And if you sit with a pretty girl for an hour, it seems like a minute. We expect the same applies to prison. A minute in jail would seem like forever, and an hour of freedom would seem like a minute. Imagine then how someone must feel when sentenced to 1,000 years of imprisonment. Imagine serving the longest day with just 999 years and 364 days remaining. But how did people end up with the longest prison sentences ever? The following list of individuals given the longest sentences only include those not sentenced to life imprisonment, but instead given a specific amount of time in years. So here we'll mention that we have purposefully omitted people such as Terry Nichols, who earned 161 life sentences for his role in the Oklahoma City bombing, or Martin Bryant, who received more than 35 life sentences for the Port Arthur massacre. The reason for this is that a life sentence means different things in different locations, so their exact time is impossible to compare. In parts of the Netherlands, for example, a life sentence means that you are jailed literally until you die, which would of course vary from person to person. And some countries don't even have life imprisonment as an available option for sentencing. This includes Spain, Mexico, and Serbia. So for clarity's sake, we're sticking to more universal and exact sentencing of a specific year time frame. Now, let's begin. In 10th place on our list of the longest prison sentences ever is Inez del Rio Prada, who was given a 3,828-year punishment. We're talking centuries here and dozens of them. Now that is a long time. Clearly those determining her fate were sending a message, but what did she do to inspire it? Her many crimes were carried out as a member of ETA, a separatist group associated with regions of Spain and France. This group is well known to be violent, and Prada played a large role in many of its most destructive actions. This likely included countless additional killings, but it was the 1986 Plaza Repubblica Dominicana bombing for which Prada was convicted. The car bomb used in the attack was equipped with over 77 pounds of explosives and lethal shrapnel and fitted with a remote-controlled detonator. It left 23 dead and 32 wounded. Those injured included civilians. The dead were members of the police force on their way to further training and traveling via bus. The blast sent the bus flying in the air. However, despite this, Prada would not actually end her days in prison. She was released in 2013 against efforts of the Spanish government to prevent it. The European Court of Human Rights had intervened on her behalf, and she walked out as a free person. The 9th longest sentence on our list is the 4,797 years given to the Spaniard Henri Perot. This was a well-earned punishment. Perot was part of the ETA as well, and so it should be no surprise that he was guilty of many atrocities. In fact, he was convicted of as many as 26 murders, as well as 166 further attempts at murder. Thankfully, he isn't more accurate. Among other crimes, Perot was found guilty for his role in the 1987 ETA Zaragoza barracks bombing. Again, the attack used a large car bomb and targeted the civil guard, this time when they were sleeping. However, it also hit and killed their families. The 11 dead included 3 women and several children. Among them were 2-year-old twins. The week before, the Prime Minister had made a statement suggesting that terrorists were losing their edge. Many believed that ETA would soon be forced to open negotiations. Clearly, if this was true, they weren't backing down without a fight. But many would pay for their actions, including Perot, who is still serving time for his crimes. 5 men from Guatemala tie for 8th place at 6,060 years on our list of longest prison sentences. Their crimes focused on a small area in the middle of North Guatemala, and they were soldiers at the time. What they did there was particularly heinous, even to those well familiar with all kinds of criminal offenses. On December 6th, they worked as part of a unit of Caibil Special Forces to attack the town of Dos Aires. They collectively killed as many as 250 men, women, and children over the span of 3 days, and then left their remains in a well near some fields. By the time they moved on, as far as we know, there was no one left living. It took years and the efforts of both the US and Guatemalan authorities to bring any of those responsible to justice, and all 5 of these men were living in the US when they were arrested. Darren Anderson was sentenced to the 7th longest term in prison, with 11,250 years behind bars. This is a little surprising given the nature of his crimes. Anderson and 2 others repeatedly and brutally assaulted an elderly woman. though Anderson was not present when his accomplices first noticed her at a gas station. The other two followed her and rammed her car while she drove, so she lost control and went off the road. She was then raped repeatedly in different locations. Anderson appeared on the scene later, trading places with one of the original men and violently assaulting Stuckey at a motel. Eventually, she was able to dial 0 and get assistance. In the end, he was given 2,250 years for all he had done. However, Anderson tried what countless criminals have attempted before him and appealed this sentence in hopes of a better one. This wasn't the best decision, and he was convicted again. And this time, an additional 9,500 years were added to his existing sentence, although he did later have this hefty sum reduced by 500 years. Lucky him! Also, he went down in Guinness World Records history. That's right, he holds a claim to fame as the criminal with the greatest jail term following an appeal. We're sure he's celebrating. Alan Wayne Maclaurin earns a spot on our list with the 6th lengthiest jail sentencing of 21,250 years as an accomplice to Darren Anderson in the robbing, kidnapping, and rape of a woman. He was given the greater jail term as the one who initially kidnapped and assaulted the victim. However, Maclaurin appealed this decision. It's a good thing he did too, as it got him 500 years fewer. So that only leaves him with what, around 20,750 years to go? The 5th longest sentence was handed down to Charles Scott Robinson of 30,000 years. The 8-time felon had his fate sealed after just a 35-minute jury deliberation, and he was convicted of 6 counts and assigned 5,000 for each due to savage acts against a 3-year-old victim. Prior crimes included burglary and concealing and being in possession of stolen property. Life without parole was not an option for the jury, which led them to do the next best thing: give him thousands of years sentencing. As he maliciously preyed upon the defenseless and innocent, they didn't want to see him back in society. The Corrections Department did eventually commute the sentence to 6 life terms of 45 years, but the judge on the case had expected this. He ordered all to be served consecutively. What this means is that once Robinson is up for parole for one life sentence 13 to 15 years later, he'll have to wait another 13 to 15 years for each of the ones that remain. Only then will he actually be eligible to leave prison. That's 13 to 15 years times 6. In other words, the soonest he could be let free would be in 78 years when he's 108 years old. 3 Spanish men, Emilio Suarez Trachoras, Jamal Zugam, and Abman El-Nawi, earned sentences of 34,715 years, 42,922 years, and 42,924 years respectively, or the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd longest sentences ever. Together, they were responsible for an act in 2004 that was labeled the deadliest since the Second World War. It was the worst ever in Spain's history. It took place on March 11th of 2004, 3 days before the general elections. Unfortunately, no one knew what was coming. 10 separate blasts on 4 commuter trains detonated within minutes of each other. 191 were left dead, and almost 2,000 were wounded. At first, the act was attributed to the violent separatist group ETA that both Prada and Perot belonged to. However, before long, the investigation's focus turned to Al-Qaeda. This greatly influenced the subsequent election, as the prime minister in charge had supported the US-Iraq invasion. Needless to say, a new party was voted in not long after, and he was replaced. The 3 men given thousands of year sentences were part of a much larger operation that involved a minimum of 18 additional terrorists. Trachoras, Zugam, and El-Nawi were ultimately quite lucky to be citizens of Spain, where laws dictate that they will serve at most 40 years for their crimes, not the 30 to 40,000 of their sentences. Finally, Kamoy Tipiaso of Thailand tops our list with the longest sentence of all at a whopping 141,078 years for a crime that actually set the Guinness World Record for corporate fraud. Her crimes involved the use of a pyramid scheme. To succeed, she abused the trust and connection she held as the spouse of a high-ranking Royal Thai Air Force officer and as an employee of the Petroleum Authority of Thailand. She also hardly looked criminal. Young, attractive, with raven black hair and thick eyelashes, she may have used charm to her advantage. In any case, she along with 7 others ran what's known as a chit fund in the 1960s. Those who invested in it believed that they owned shares in oil and would enjoy high returns. Of course, they were wrong on both counts, and their money was only used to line Kamoy and her accomplices' pockets. 16,231 people were defrauded in this way for decades. In the end, all those in top government positions were compensated for their losses. We assume the less powerful were not. After restitutions were made, her trial began. Luckily for Kamoy, a Thai law passed that same year made it so that fraud convictions came with limits for allowable sentences. Her 141,078 years were far in excess of that amount. It capped the punishment at 20, which, while still long, is next to nothing in comparison. But get this, in the end she didn't even serve this much. After 8 years behind bars, she was released, serving less than half the allowable maximum penalty. All of the hair on your body grows at about half an inch per month, and that includes beards. If you're locked up for 2 years and never shaved, that means your beard could be a full foot long. If you're locked up for 80 years and never shaved, it could be, well, still probably around the same length, since that's roughly the maximum most beards will grow. But no matter if you have a foot-long beard or no beard at all, Dollar Shave Club has exactly what you need to look, feel, and smell your best. And not just for shaving. DSC can solve all your grooming needs in one box with products for showering, oral care, and of course, shaving. Now is the perfect time to see how amazing their products are by getting one of their shave, shower, and oral starter sets, each for only $5. Their hydrated facial cleanser has a citrus and Hawaiian ginger scent, and it's honestly one of the best things I've ever smelled. So join the club and get started with this exclusive offer today at dollarshaveclub.com/infographics. So what do you think? Do the crimes fit the punishment? Were some of the criminals whose sentences were cut short in some way let off too easy? Let us know in the comments. Also, be sure to check out our other video. This man spent 43 years in isolation. Thanks for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.